No, I think you're spot on. I think that's a really important thing to note. And a very nuanced distinction, like you mentioned, for the US and this situation. I think that's one of the important takeaways here is a lot of brands and creators and even platforms recognize, okay, so we have the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. That is only enforceable by the FTC. And so they might work into, like, this is terrible, but they might work into their business model and understanding of, okay, the fines that we're going to get from the FTC, because they're the only ones that can bring action under that, are going to pale in comparison to the revenues that we'll generate or the value we'll add back to our shareholders. I'm not saying that's what these businesses were saying, but that kind of risk analysis, that business analysis really comes into play. And where I think a lot of that is getting undercut is where state laws come into play. And we're seeing that with the patchwork of state level privacy laws that are being enacted or amendments to those that are happening, like in California. And the true question will come at a later date, maybe. Put a pin mark there with a question, put a tab there with a question mark. What federal regulation is going to come in and override CCPA or CPRA or Nevada's or what have you? And that's the question that remains. And whether they will or not, it's like you said, can Congress, can legislators get together enough to pass sweeping privacy regulation? Who knows? But until then, it is this thing. And I think for creators and brands, oftentimes it was like, okay, we have the FTC guidance and they can enforce against us for not properly disclosing something as an advertisement, for example. That's one way that the FTC can regulate, like you're saying, that relationship between consumers and people that are selling something. But in this case, a lot of brands and creators and people in the creator economy space haven't really been taken into account. Okay, now we have to be aware of what are these other laws? What other pitfalls do we need to be aware of? And I think this case is perfect to highlight, okay, not everything is preempted by a federal law that you might have thought of. And now you have to be really doing an analysis on a state level of what state laws. And not to get political, but I think we're seeing that too with how platforms are being treated in certain states like Texas and Florida or other states in the US, or even outside the US, entire countries are banning TikTok, for example. So what other external factors will be impacting a business model? And it's getting really difficult to predict in the creator economy space.